is there really a climate crisis?
That's the question. And we need to first understand that crisis is not a scientific word. It's a word from the realm of human experience. So what we need to do when we're addressing the scientific facts and the evidence and the data is to try and quantify what we mean by a crisis. Well, we do know that the temperatures of the globe have been rising. Now, the globe is a big place, the world is a big place, and it doesn't have a temperature, right? It varies, the temperature varies over day and night, winter and summer, different places around the globe, and you can cook up a number, an average number, taking all sorts of these things into account, and ask what happened to this number, right? And as far as we know from the data, that number has indeed risen. In the last 120 years or so, it has risen by about 1.1 degrees centigrade. Now, is this a crisis? That's not a well-defined question, right? Because we hardly feel it in our lifetime because the change is so slow. 1 degree over 100 years, we don't really feel it personally. So you need statistics. So let's try to quantify crisis. What's the worst thing that can happen? People talk about sea level rise.
Correct.
Right?
That's the major concern.
That's a
And
major
they always
concern.
show you melting the glaciers and icebergs, and that's where they go with it.
Right, and you see pictures of Manhattan
Correct.
Underwater, and in Hollywood you see movies. But what the data shows, and we have pretty good data about sea level rise, is two things. You look at the sea level, at the height of the sea level, and you see two things. First of all, the sea level has been steadily rising since the mid-19th century. So long before humans started emitting anything into the atmosphere.
Is that the 1800s?
Yes, 1850, 1870, we were coming out of the Little Ice Age. Europe was frozen. And as Europe started to defreeze, sea levels are beginning to rise. Now, sea level rise due to two things. One is the thermal expansion of the oceans, and second is the melting of the icebergs. And it's constantly rising regardless of what we did, because it started long before we started emitting anything. Now, the second thing you can do is look at the rate of sea level rise. And when you look at the numbers, you see that the rate of sea level in the past 100 years is 3 millimeters per year. That's 3 centimeters a decade.
Which is a little bit more than an inch.
A little bit more than an inch. And 30 centimeters a century. That's,
22 inches.
22 inches, right? Now,
In a decade.
In a century.
22 centimeters in a
In a century.
In 100 years.
In 100 years.
Wow.
That's not an immediate, imminent catastrophe. It's just, something to take into account.